I'm going to walk down in front of the stage, and if you have a question, just raise your hand. And while I'm walking down there, if you have a question, if you would just tell us your name and what company you represent, that would be wonderful. And I'm actually going to ask a question as I'm walking down the stairs. And Todd, I'm going to send this question to you. As you know, I-85-74 is critical. Going back to the 73 or 74% of Fayette County residents that work outside our community. Can you give us a little more specifics about, obviously I-85-74 is outside of our county, but can you give me a little more about that interchange and what would be done to fix it?
Well, that interchange is actually a really good example of a project that is outside the boundaries of a county, but yet it's probably more important than half the projects in your county. Douglas has a similar situation. Going out I-20, their number one priority in Douglas County is the I-20-285 interchange. Makes sense, because everybody goes through there. So the same thing for you guys. A large percentage of your county actually traverses that interchange every day. And as we're looking at the different designs, and there literally are 3 or 4 different designs right now, and some of them are really expensive. So to get the better design, we decided to go ahead and put this on the list, and we've got half the project essentially funded with the sales tax, and the other half will be funded with federal money. So it's interstate. Feds are going to be involved anyway. Typically, we like not to have the federal government involved, by the way. That's one of the beauties of the sales tax is a vast majority. In fact, statewide, only 8.8% of the projects, so 1,644 projects statewide, only 8.8% of the projects have federal aid money, because we were trying not to deal with the federal red tape, and it's very difficult to get through that process. But this is on the interstate anyway, so we actually split fund this project, and we're looking at design still, but that will be, I can assure you, a great improvement, whatever we do there, for the citizens of Fayette County. You've got other projects. You mentioned them. Somebody mentioned them a little while ago. I guess you did. Talking about 54, 85, State Route 85 going up in, I guess, Riverdale. And this connector project at 92, 138. These are all projects that really benefit you as much or more than the counties they reside in. So it gives you an opportunity to see that regionalism isn't this evil word that some people make it out to be. You guys are a part of this region. There was a lot of talk in the very beginning about Fayette County. They didn't want to be part of this region. They want to be part of Three Rivers. Look, when most of your workers go back and forth to the north, you need to be part of that region. So that's why you are part of the Atlanta Regional Commission. And a lot of folks don't like that. They don't like to be part of something. They want to be totally separate. And it's almost comical. I have so many people from Fayette County call me and they go, we don't want any transit. And then I mention, well, how come I see so many Fayette County tags in the park and ride lot on State Route 34 over near Noonan for the Greta bus? And they go, oh, well, the Greta's different. Express, that's not transit. Those words come out of people's mouths. And I go, well, yes, it is transit. And that's part of the system. So, I mean, you guys need to be tied with Atlanta. I'm not saying MARTA Rail is going to come down here, but there are your job centers. While I think it's awesome that you guys have so many jobs here, and y'all have done a lot to build industrial growth, especially along 74 and different places, but still, the long-term viability of this county is not to have every job in Fayette County. It's going to be in Fayette, Coweta, Clayton, you people going everywhere. We're all one state, and a rising tide rises all ships, right? So I've tried to sell this same point to people in South Georgia. You know, Atlanta passing this is very important to coastal Georgia. I gave a speech in Brunswick yesterday, and they were going, what? It really is, because those folks down there do so much business in Atlanta. They need it to pass, and they need companies to be thriving in Atlanta, because it ultimately gives them business in the coast. Same thing down there. You need, there's about 10 projects in coastal Georgia list that are related back to the port. You're thinking, why is Fayette related? You're tied at the hip with the Port of Savannah, guys, and you don't even know it. They've got a stat down there, Georgia Port Authority. It says 1 out of every 5 jobs is indirectly related back to the port in Savannah. All the product that comes into Georgia, it's just amazing what it all links together. And having people understand that is very difficult, because you're trying to explain this to people that basically go back and forth to their jobs and they don't think big picture. So that's part of our job here today, is to tell them there is a big picture. And that's an awesome stat, Robert. You brought up about 5 minutes of savings saves you really millions and millions of dollars. And most people don't think along those lines. So they've got to get educated. And, the voter turnout's not expected to be great anytime we do one of these, but you got to make sure that the people that are going to vote are at least educated one way or the other.
Thank you, Todd. All right, what questions do we have from the audience? And again, if you just say your name and who you work for.
I'm Joe Thomas. I'm with Clubsy Tutoring. You mentioned transit down here in Fayette County. That's been defined as MARTA, even though you gave an example of GRTA. And you talked about how there's two groups that are opposed to this. Well, down here in Fayette County, most of it is because of the MARTA component of it. But I understand politically that those counties get to pick their projects. So I'm just curious, and I'll ask this to Mr. Pope. Does MARTA help you as UPS in Fulton and DeKalb County? Because that's the big gripe here in Fayette County, is that doesn't do a thing to help congestion. Thank you.
To answer that question, I guess the question about MARTA, it does not do anything for me in my Fayette operation. So I can understand your point. My Fulton industrial operation is my lifeblood of my part-time workforce. UPS builds their entire power network basically around four-hour increments. So when my drivers are on the street 9 to 7 o'clock, and when they come in at night, I basically have 6 to 10 o'clock to process all those packages, get them on an airplane, get them on a trailer. Then we have a 4-hour time where we have a night sort for 2-day transit or 3-day transit, but most of that stuff's moving to be somewhere by 4 o'clock in the morning. So my next group of people comes in and works from 4 o'clock in the morning until 7:30 or 8 to load the vehicles so we hit the street on time the next morning to service the customer. So if you look at Fulton Industrial, it is a metro area. It's in an industrial park right at the I-20, I-285 interchange. So when you look at that, I would say probably, well, I know I can't speak for the hub. They've got quite a few more people than I have. But about 55% of my workforce that works there in the morning comes to work via MARTA, even at 3:30 and 4 in the morning. So it is important to me. Our Pleasantdale facility on Doraville, which is one of our largest facilities, it's a 40,000 an hour hub sorting facility in Doraville. They're heavily supplied by the workforce. So when we look at jobs and we look at the economy, depending on the geographical zone, in the metro Atlanta area, especially in our largest facilities, a large number of our people ride to and from work on MARTA. Does that answer?
I'll just throw one more thing out. We mentioned that 73.5% of Fayette workers that sleep in Fayette work elsewhere in the region. So roughly 3/4. So a lot of us are, I don't work in my home county. So we're all over the place. We're in the region. MARTA carries nearly 500,000, they provide nearly 500,000 rides a day. So if MARTA weren't around, if we didn't have MARTA, then we would have 500,000 rides that have to be accommodated by our road network, which is already stressed to the breaking point. When we have rain, when we have accidents, it creates immense delays for us. And then I'll mention just one last thing. There's MARTA, or transit generally gets a bad rap because you'll hear that 4% or maybe 5% of workers use it to commute to work. And that statistic, I'm not going to challenge that statistic. However, there was just a study that came out actually Friday of last week. Only 14.7% of Atlanta workers can utilize transit to get to work. So if you look at the 4% that use it in comparison to the 14% that have access, you're pushing up against a third of workers that have access to it that utilize it. We would never have gotten the Olympic Games without a heavy rail system. We would never have gotten Super Bowls or Final Fours, nor would we in the future. And I won't even mention conventions and conferences and tourists and people that use it to go to the airport. And by the way, I think you mentioned the airport. The airport is another, number 10 cargo airport in the world. So, that's another incredible beneficiary, and an immense amount of workers use MARTA to get to in transit to get to the airport for their job as well. So, great question, though. Great question.
Okay, other questions?
Come on now, I know y'all have more questions.
I'd say during this downtime, can I take it real quick? He's gonna. If you're gonna, that's a long way to walk. It's okay. It's like Mike Donahue.
He can. Yeah.
Okay, why don't we do that? Oh, is that Chairman?
I think you had one on the left over here. First, Jack. Hold on.
It's Jack Smith up there.
Yeah.
The lady there on the left.
Can you turn off the oven light?
It should be well done by this time.
I'm not going to have to go to the tanning booth.
Okay. I just have a question about the MARTA thing, because mostly people are concerned about being able to support what it is. It's already underfunded. There's huge financial issues. I think that's the true issue with MARTA, plus they're talking about being able to support it operationally after the 10-year tax expires. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, well, I can address one thing. MARTA has, okay, let's talk about the MARTA projects on the list. We've got to get specific. They have a big chunk of money for state of good repair projects. These are projects like taking the airport station and redoing it. Y'all have all been to that airport station. It's not a pleasant place to be at night. After you get off an airplane, you have to get downtown. So, and they've got a lot of other station upgrades, escalator upgrades. Those things will help them in their costing model as far as maintenance operations. There are a couple of projects that they're still deciding through exactly the financial, I guess, long-term responsibility, like the Clifton line, which is from Lindbergh Station over to a huge employment center in Emory and CDC. But if that becomes MARTA, the 1% sales tax that the cabin Fulton that 50% of their money still has to go toward operations. So it's not like they have no operations. And in this bill, this is a unique opportunity, guys. Every local SPLOST that you have, and even you have an education SPLOST here in Fayette County. This school was built with an education SPLOST. You can build the school, but that air conditioner running above my head cannot be run by SPLOST money, correct? It comes from general fund. Is that right?
Mr.
Right.
Chairman's here.
Yep. So this is a little bit different. This transportation sales tax allowed for operations and maintenance of the facility to be built into the cost. So depending on the project, they actually built in a number of years of operations money into the cost of the project. And I can't quote off the top of my head what it is.
10 years.
Is it sometimes 10 years? It was kind of they could do up to 20 years. So the first part of the project is open, and for a period of 10 years, it's covered. So it's not like it's not covered the day it opens. Does that make sense?
Can I say? I think one of the things that with this or any project that we're going to do as a public, we're missing an accountability part. We're missing that part. And you know, one of the things on here, at least one of the things that we put in our local, we have a local citizens accountability committee in each region to oversee that. And I think it's easy to sit around and say, oh, the money's being wasted, it's not being used properly. And I can name 100 projects I would feel that way about involved with such activities, I guess. But just like running a business at UPS, we have to go through a whole series of things to get the approval to do it. And then there's an oversight that you better hit it. It's not an optional. No, let's not, you know, this is the plan. This is what you're supposed to do with the money. There's got to be accountability to it, and there has to be some oversight, and there has to be some consequences for failing to do so. And I think sometimes when we get involved with the public sector, we just kind of fuss about it. And I think the missing part here is where's the accountability and where's the consequence if we don't do what we say we're going to do when we vote yes. And that would be with anything, whether it was for the school or whether it's for me making a decision whether I'm going to spend $1 million on a particular project in my area of responsibility. There's a cost justification for it. There's a cost to figure out what the impact and reduction should be. But ultimately, where we usually drop the ball is where's the follow-up and accountability associated with it so we don't have the problems that we can sit around and all say, well, that wasn't very well run. I don't know that I want to put my money there again. So there's a missing link there that I think we have to be accountable for. And that's in this referendum. And hopefully that would be taken pretty strongly. I think when we talk as UPS, we would expect that.
I'll just mention one last thing, and I don't want to, I mean, we can turn this into a MARTA discussion if you want to, but really MARTA is a tiny part. It's less than 10% of the funds in the regional project list out of the $6.12 billion, less than $600 million what we're talking about, the $60 million a year. Now, MARTA and transit generally, it's just not, let's talk about transit. Transit doesn't make money, it doesn't turn a profit. If you owned MARTA, you wouldn't make a lot of money because it doesn't make a profit. And it doesn't make a profit anywhere in the world. It's one of those things, it's a quality of life issue, but it's an essential function of government. It's like the police station. It's like the police force. It's like the fire department. Anybody have folks that served in the military or have family that served in the military? Guess what? Doesn't make a profit. There are certain functions of government that are the cost of doing business. It provides the basic framework and the basic environment so that private businesses can thrive, prosper, and make a profit. And transit is one of those things. Transportation is one of those things. I was challenged this morning when I was on the radio about, well, MARTA doesn't make any money. MARTA doesn't turn a profit. And the fact of the matter is, roads don't make a profit either. They all require subsidies. Unless we're going to get to the place where we have in California, Florida, Texas, other places where they've tolled roads to the extent that roads do make a profit. But trust me, I live in Gwinnett County. There are people that are howling about the hot lanes. How'd you like to have some hot lanes down in Fayette County? No, I don't see any volunteers. I actually like the hot lane. I'm a big fan. But generally speaking, we in Georgia, you know, we're not big fans of tolls. We're not big fans of those hot lanes. And so, but that's the way that you would have transportation networks make a profit. So, Jack, I think.
Hold on just a minute. When the Georgia Association of Realtors and the National Association looked at this whole referendum, and of course, like I said, we're normally against any type of tax increases. We fight that all across the country in every state and every community from a private property right standpoint. One of the things that got us over the hurdle here was the accountability that's built into the legislation and the sunset in the legislation. We never would have put as much money in support of these two campaigns here in Georgia had it not had those two components in this tax, the sunset and the accountability, and a citizen's accountability, not a government accountability. And just from a Fayette County citizen standpoint, as I spoke of earlier, all of our money, we're getting more back than we're putting in. So from that standpoint, we're not putting Fayette County money into this transit at all. There is one transit line item that is for Fayette County, one little small item. And what that is funds that are going to Fayette Senior Services for their transportation of seniors to the doctor and back and forth from their home when they need it. But other than that, there's not one line item, and it's prevented by this law that it would come into Fayette County.
Other questions?
Jack is next, I guess.
Y'all stand up when you. It's time.
All right, let me get Catherine first, and then we'll get Mr. Smith.
I'm Catherine Sanderson. My question is for you, Mr. Faulkner. You mentioned the money raised versus the money spent, and those numbers, frankly, surprised me because places I've hung out lately, I've heard kind of different numbers. One area that I think should be folks that understand where all I've been lately understand. One point of clarification. I mean, I think that's an area that has not been very well clarified, and I think it's one of the things that's tripping folks up is that 15% number. People have the impression when told that 15% of the money stays in county, that means that 85% of the money that's raised in the county goes out of the county. So can you clarify, and I mean, I'd ask you to clarify that today, but I think that message needs to be clarified, period, to the population, if you can find a way to do it. Clarify, why is there a discrepancy there saying 15% stays in the county versus the amount of money raised in the county is going to be 190 million was the word you used, versus $260 million worth of projects that will benefit the county. You know, that's a very different number than, hey, only 15% of what we raise is going to get spent here.
Correct. And that's an excellent question. And last week at the chamber, when Phil Mallon from the Fayette County Road Department and then the two engineers from Peachtree City and Fayetteville were there to speak, they gave us an update on the numbers. So those were the numbers that I was actually using. And I think I have them on a chart down here somewhere. The 15%, and you gentlemen correct me if I get off here a little bit, but it's the total amount of money that is raised in the referendum for this region. 15% of that goes back to the communities. Okay, so it's not just what comes out of Fayette County, 15% of that, it's 15% of the total goes back to the communities as discretionary funds. And then in my totals, what I was totaling was the project list within Fayette County, which is the 173 million, I can't see the chart.
175, 466.
175 million, and then the discretionary at 45 million. And then the projects that are nearby, like the 74 interchange or 54 or whatever, and that comes up to the 262 million.
So just to clarify, that 174 million is separate from the 15%. I mean, those are, that's in addition to.
Correct. I'm gonna let Mr. DOT explain that.
This is a common error, particularly in rural counties, because outside of Atlanta, 25% of the money goes back to the cities and counties, all right? So they go, what happens to the other 75% of the money? We get that question all the time. So what the formula is, like he said, so they take the overall, let's say a region raises $1 billion. Let's just get out of Atlanta for a second, okay? Let's get maybe in Three Rivers. A region raises $1 billion. So they take 25% of that, which will be $250 million. They distribute that to the cities and counties, and it's by a formula. And the formula is weighted on population and centerline miles you have in your county. All right. So a county that just happens to have a lot of centerline miles does better than a county that doesn't. So it isn't a match. In other words, you can look at yours, you actually do quite well, because if you take 15% of what y'all raised in this county, it would be a lot less than the 45 million. So y'all actually mathematically do very well, which means there are counties that don't do as well under that discretionary formulas. They call it the discretionary formula. So, for instance, let's go to a ridiculous county, Hancock County. Y'all know where that is? Sparta, right? All right, Sparta. They raise like, I mean, it's sad, like $450,000 a year in a sales tax. 90% of it goes to pay off their jail. All right. 10% goes to something. They spend nothing on transportation. All right, so they raise $500,000 a year, but yet the formula, because it counts dirt roads too. All right, they make like 1.2 million a year in discretionary, the 25%. So just in the discretionary money alone, they're getting more than twice back what they raise. So guess who's a big fan of this process? Hancock County, right? And it comes at the cost of Augusta and Columbia County, because that's what region they're in. So, but the bulk of the big projects on the list from the regional standpoint are, guess where? Where the voters live, in Augusta and Richmond. It created almost a dynamic of synergy that these counties and cities and the rural and urbans work together to make it all happen. And just, I'm not bragging here. I'm not sure this is a good stat or not, but there were 159 counties. Each county had 2 representatives. Plus you had Kasim Reed. So you had a possible 319 votes on the list, right, statewide. Right? Atlanta had 21 votes. It was unanimous in Atlanta. You guys probably heard that. We had 3 people in this entire state voted no. 3. That tells me they all worked together. They saw the benefits and figured out how to make it work, that everybody was sort of happy. Not everybody was ecstatic, but most everybody was sort of happy. When you start diving down in, who gets what does Fayette get compared to, you start having a losing battle. I was in Thomasville, Georgia, Thursday night. Thomasville is a big generator of revenue because everybody goes there to shop. They actually lose. They generate a lot more money than they have in projects, and they were all mad about it. And the chamber person said, 45% of the money raised in this county comes from people that don't live in the county. And they were mad, though, that they didn't get to keep it all. So they were trying to explain this whole concept of, hey, thinking outside the box. GDOT, how we fund road projects, we don't look at Fayette and say, how much gas tax receipts does Fayette County have? Thank goodness on your sake, because you don't raise a lot of gas tax, by the way. You know why? You buy in other counties, and you don't, the interstate counties. So Dooley County probably has more gas tax receipts than you have. You know where Dooley County is? Unadilla? Because they got 4 exits on I-75, right? They probably beat y'all to death. So we don't spread the money out based on gas tax receipts, because we do it on a more strategic level. So the same thing applies here. You got to think through this strategically and where you need to spend your money. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, but not to belabor the point, it's not being conveyed. The perception, I mean, you know, this handout says Fayette County is 15%. Will bring, there is the perception that Fayette County is going to get 15%, and the other 85 is going to go somewhere else. And that's kind of what I'm trying to go.
And that's what we're here tonight to try to convey, the right message and to get that to you so you can get that out to your clients, your family, your sphere of influence.
I think an easy way of perhaps explaining that is that 85% is the articulated list of projects that's called out and specified. And in Fayette County, there are 10 projects on that specific 85% specified articulated list. All right.
The 15% is the discretionary component that the county decides where it's going to go. It's not specified on the list.
So Fayette County and Peachtree City and Tyrone and Fayetteville have the opportunity to determine their projects above and beyond those 10 county projects, countywide projects.
But again, I think we're talking communication. And, you know, even if we'd have just taken this little brochure, okay, and put that chart in this brochure, simple for people to understand. But we didn't even total, you know, we've done certain things, we've done very well. We've tried to put out what the project list is, but how easy would it have been to put a number here at the bottom that shows the total of these projects added up? So we've got to, over these next few days, weeks, focus on the communications to people so that they can understand. I'm with Catherine. I'm tired of answering the 15% question. Okay.
Marcy, will you stand up? We didn't introduce Marcy Thrash, or did we? All right, so we didn't. Marcy Thrash is with the Untied Atlanta campaign, and Fayette County is in her territory, so to speak, and I would really, really be grateful if you guys would connect after we finish, because it is not too late. We can make these changes that you're talking about today. Well, I don't know about today, but we can make them quick, and we can provide them to you so that you can push them out, and that's what we're going to ask your assistance with, and ask and really hope that you can help do that. But we absolutely need your assistance and help to make sure that the message, because you're the ones on the front line. You're getting the questions from your clients and your other associates, people that you're in the community with. But Marcy absolutely will be here and can, you know, thank you so much for bringing that point up.
Jack has been very patient up there. Let me go up to Mr. Smith up top, and I'll repeat it if they can't hear you.
I have one comment, then I have a question. Okay.
Short comment. Short comment.
My comment is, Catherine, the Disinformation Bureau in Fayette County is feeding falsehoods specifically to get you to think the way you are thinking. Not the way I'm thinking, but the way people are talking. My question is this, and probably Todd, you're probably the best one to address it. There's a lot of sound bites floating around. One of the sound bites that I have heard locally is one of you guys or one of your associates somewhere in north of Atlanta made the comment that whenever this transportation tax is passed, if it were so passed, that it would have absolutely no effect on your commute time. Now, with that as a background, my question to you is, can you elaborate on the proof or falsehood of that? Why? And secondarily, can you discuss just a little bit about the effect of doing nothing, given the fact that we are substantially increasing the traffic that will come through the Port of Savannah, and the effect that that transportation transit mechanism alone will have on the traffic within our region?
All right. I'm going to start on the back end first and go to the front part. Port traffic. We did a freight logistics study recently, and we've heard for years that build a bypass around Atlanta, keep the trucks out of Atlanta, you'll be fine. That's hogwash. Let me tell you why. It would help, because 30% of these trips, truck trips, freight movement, is passed through Georgia. 70% of the truck trips in Georgia are going to destinations in Georgia, particularly Atlanta. Atlanta is one of the largest inland ports in the world. Say that again, one of the largest inland ports in the world. I think it ranks 4th or 5th now in the United States. Now, China's got some that are just astronomical, as you can imagine. But we're talking about freight logistics hub centers. We got a guy here, that's his business. But trucks are coming to Metro Atlanta. Get up in an airplane sometime and fly across Fulton Industrial Boulevard. There's building after building after building, and all they do is move. Freight comes in, goes out. Packages, repackages, goes out. So if the Port of Savannah grows like it's growing, and then particularly if we get it deepened, they can accept the Panamax ships, you can see a drastic uptick in the amount of freight that comes in through the Savannah port, and a lot of that will get processed at logistics centers where? In and around Atlanta. So it will have a dramatic effect on transportation. Now, the first part of your question, going back to that, I guess let me rephrase it again so I can make sure I answer it correctly. Somebody says that it doesn't help our commute whatsoever, right?
The reported comment that came from a meeting of this type on the other side of Atlanta,
Okay.
that is being broadcast in our area,
All right.
that a comment was made by a transportation official, don't know who it was, and the comment was, after we spend the money for this,
It does nothing good.
if it passes, it will not change your commute time at all.
Well, that is incorrect. The Atlanta Regional Commission actually invested a lot of money in a modeling software called REMI. It's an economic model, and it looks at economic development. They also have a very elaborate transportation model, and when they modeled all the projects, there were significant increases in efficiencies at the location where the projects are. So in other words, let's take a bottleneck, 285 at 20. That project alone on the west side of town has tremendous increases in efficiency and time savings, saving commute times from people from Douglas. 285 at 400, what was the number, Dave?
285 and 400, and when that project is built in the T-SPLOST list, it'll produce a 32% reduction in congestion.
In that one spot.
At that one bottleneck. And the better one is 85 and Highway 74, State Road 74. Right. 62% reduction in congestion at this exit.
So what you've got to do is string together improvements as you go through them. Now, Dave gave this example coming here. The subdivision street I live on has 4 homes on it. The transportation sales tax will have no effect on the congestion level on my street. Right? I've checked it out. Nothing on the list. Matter of fact, the next street I get on, no effect. The next street I get on, no effect. But guess what? I eventually get to a location on my commute. I go to Atlanta every day. I go through 3 or 4 different projects that will help my commute incrementally. So I'm not sure who said that, and I hate that it was said, and I'm sure it was taken out of context in a drastic way. But yes, the data shows that it does do work.
And I can tell you, I can give you the background by the way, Jack. Mike Alexander was the person who was put on film, and it was a meeting, I believe, in Cherokee County. And what they did, in fact, every time I can talk, I appreciate you bringing it up because I get to talk about it again. It's one of the big lies that the opponents of moving Atlanta forward repeat so often that they believe if they repeat it often enough, it'll become true. So I always encourage folks, push back on that because it's an absolute lie. It's what I call classic Stephen. Anybody stay up late? Watch Comedy Central? It's Stephen Colbert journalism. And what they've done is they took about a 2.5-minute sequence with a question and a long answer that Mike Alexander gave, and they took about 2 3/4 seconds of his answer, and they played it, and he says, for a lot of people in Atlanta, they may not notice a big difference in their commute. And he goes on to give about 2 minutes further of an explanation that we talked about, because while there are a lot of people who may not notice a big difference because they only travel a mile or two to work, there are many more people who will notice a profound difference. So,
I just would add that, logistically speaking, I guess for 34 years of somewhere around the North Atlanta area, I kind of say again, what's the cost of doing nothing? What would have happened if we hadn't put in Spaghetti Junction? I can tell you that side of town wouldn't even move anywhere near what it does now. And I know that was a huge project at its time. The widening of 400. We kind of look at the times now. 75 clogs up earlier than 400. So you kind of look at the culture of where people do too. So when you're in my arena of business, you're not only looking at the timing of the day, but you look at the projects. But you see, and I see, a significant change. When you're running a fleet of vehicles anywhere down the road, you can see a change. And as projects are completed, whether it be a repaving project, a widening project, I can tell you, I think the problem is we're not keeping up with it. When we do make the gains and the growth overtakes it because there's no additional change, at some point in time, that project that worked becomes behind. I know UPS has a problem. We built a building and we've outgrown it the day we moved in because buildings make no money for me. They basically become a sorting facility. I make money with the customers out on the road picking up and delivering parcels. So we're very stingy with an inch of concrete. Most people are amazed when we back our vehicles in and there is no room between our vehicles. In fact, some places we jack up their transmission and roll the back end around to get them in it because concrete's a waste of money. But when you look at the efficiency of it, somewhere down the line that project resulted in an improvement to commute. It's a matter of where you catch up with it at some point in time. Because if we're going to have growth, that fixed project will eventually be needing some additional work at some point in time. And it's no different in a business environment. I can do a lot of improvements, but at some point in time I'm going to have to do another improvement if I do grow, which is a good thing. Growth is probably the best thing we ever have, but you have to keep up with it.
Now, Mr. Pope, us realtors would argue with you about that concrete. You need lots of concrete.
I didn't say land. I said concrete. I can see right now I'm going to have my 2-second clip somewhere.
And Jack, one other thing that you may or may not be aware of, when they did the analysis for deepening the ports, they showed each county how many goods and products will currently go to the Port of Savannah and what it would increase to. And I was actually surprised Fayette County in 2011 shipped $934 million worth of products for export from Fayette County to the Port of Savannah. The Atlanta region was like $16 billion total that gets shipped through the Port of Savannah. Fayette County is almost $1 billion of that, and I was actually kind of shocked with that. So with this improvement in roads, improvement in the ports, Fayette County's exports ought to increase.
I think I did.
The point was that the substantial increase in truck traffic that will result as the port is improved and increased in size will create a dramatic negative impact on traffic in the Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
That alone, added to the population increase that Dave mentioned that we're expecting in this region, when you combine those two items and you think about the additional truck traffic, which is a 30% increase, if I remember right, and the population increase, the cost of doing nothing is triple.
Okay, got a question, Kim?
Kim Leonard, I'm a Peachtree City Council member. I can address the communication problem very quickly and very easily. Our county engineer, Phil Mallon, put together a factual, concise little document that spells out everything you've ever wanted to know about SPLOST for Fayette County, but we're afraid to ask. And we have a link to it on our homepage, front and center on the Peachtree City website. So all you have to do is tell your friends to go to www.peachtree-city.org. Front and center, there's a little link. It spells out all the 85% and the projects in Fayette County. It spells out all the 15% and exactly what that discretionary money will be in each city. Peachtree City will see $1,046,000 every year for 10 years to do anything we want to with related to transportation. So now we've solved our communication problem in Fayette County.
Thank you, Kim. Go on.
Don Parr, member of the Chamber. I sat at a meeting on Saturday where we had a debate about the T-SPLOST, and the people who were anti the T-SPLOST said that what wasn't taken into consideration that that first of all the gridlock wasn't going to untie anything was the major thing that was said. So I keep hearing that. But the one thing they said is that it wasn't taken into consideration that there's going to be more of these smart cars. There's like too much money is being spent on road work, and there's going to be more telecommuting, more other kinds of ways that this gridlock and this isn't going to happen. And that was one of their major issues, was the fact that the smart cars, the telecommuting, and other ways that people aren't going to be using the road as much. And when you all did all the analysis, well, did that come up as an issue?
This is the zombie car.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to answer something. I'll give part of an answer. You know, when we did our analysis or our statewide plan, travel demand management is a term people use to manage traffic. So like heroes out there on the roadway, traffic cameras, ramp metering, all those things try to mitigate the traffic we have today. But there's another side of travel demand management, which is called, I guess it's called teleworking, it's called alternate work hours, it's called working with the business community. And you've probably heard of the Clean Air Campaign, that term before. That's an organization that actually goes out and works with employers to try to make sure people are riding together to work. Companies are offering telecommuting office opportunities. In fact, we don't really have a capacity problem on the network if people used it all 24 hours, right? UPS knows this, right? Mm-hmm. But if we evened out the traffic over 24 hours, there would be no congestion. Does that make sense? But, you know, we're not going to. We have, in Georgia, probably have done better in this travel demand management than all other states in the country. Part of my job when I was director of planning was to decide how much money goes into that. We spent really about $7 million a year on programs to encourage people to do exactly what you're saying, not ride together. We have an amazing success rate. We're national awards. So we've done, I'm not saying we're finished. We're never finished. But there is a point at which that only goes so far, and we still have congestion. Just think how what it would be if we didn't do that. If we didn't have people working 14-hour days, or 9 and alternate work weeks, or coming in at 6:30. Just think if we didn't do that, how bad it would be. You know, I go to Augusta to visit my parents, and everybody goes to work at 8. And they got congestion. It's just not a long, drawn-out period. But just think about it if we didn't have that mitigation effort going on today. And yeah, they can say that all they want to, and they can say that they're right. That is a solution, and it is a great solution, getting people not to go to work from home. But it is not but one tool in the toolbox to solve the problem.
My folks can't work from home.
Right. Well, yeah.
They need to get to work.
That's right.
All right. I think we've got time for one more question. Gene, I saw you.
My name's Gene Drake with the Georgia Concrete Paving Association.
Uh-oh.
I really was just, I wanted you all to clarify, and you touched on it, but for the lady that asked about MARTA, we have a county commissioner who you probably are aware of, who's saying that MARTA is just going to be this massive expansion of MARTA. But I'd like for you to just touch on it again, what most of the MARTA projects are, as far as main or upkeep and what have you, and what the relatively small portion really is for extended rail, which is what they're being led to believe, that there's an enormous increase in rail.
No matter how, David, you're, there are several big rail projects on the list, but the one that's really the only for sure rail is the Clifton line I mentioned to you before, which connects our MARTA system to an employment center that has 25,000 employees. Then you have a line that possibly could be light rail in the future, but on the current list, it is express bus rapid transit to Cobb County. All right? Then you have a transit project which is keeping express buses, which is Greta, up and operating, not expansion. They didn't put enough money to expand it. All right. Then you got a couple of study money to keep things going, and then you got a large pot of money to provide express or Greta premium bus service out to South DeKalb. Matter of fact, that's one of the arguments by the Sierra Club and the DeKalb NAACP is that they don't have rail on the list. They have express bus services to South DeKalb. They're mad and going to vote against it, they say, because it doesn't have rail. So in the grand scheme of things, how much rail goes on the ground is relatively small. And as far as expansions go, it is really, I don't know how long that line is from Clifton. So it's less than 3 miles. 3.7, less than 4 miles. So that's pretty small expansion.
And please forgive me. Raise your hand if I already said this, because I've spoken. I speak now. I'm speaking too many times. I don't know what I said when, but they're all running together. But Georgia is the only state. We have 11 heavy rail system, urban rail systems. Boston, Massachusetts, or Boston, Washington D.C., San Francisco. Those are the heavy rail systems. Georgia is the only state that doesn't provide funding to its urban rail system. So, as we said before, they're not intended to make a profit. There's clearly a fare box. There clearly is revenues that they generate from users, from fees. But without the state participating, jump in, Todd, if I'm wrong. Without the state participating, it's completely unreasonable to expect that MARTA is going to turn a profit like a private business would do. So, having said that, though, it's critical that we have it. We want to run it efficiently. We want to run it effectively. But it is less than 10% of the regional list. And it has gotten an immense amount of interest and coverage and whatever. Should it be run efficiently? Absolutely. Do we need it? Absolutely. But there are people who want to characterize the entire T-SPLOST as a bailout or some sort of a golden parachute or something for the MARTA system. And it's just, it's one of probably 50 different talking points that opponents throw out, hoping that some of them are going to stick. So.
And do keep in mind that regardless of whatever kind of funding source takes care of all of our transportation needs in metropolitan Atlanta, and I'm not talking about the region, I'm talking about the 26 county MSA, is, if y'all remember back in the early 2000s, we had an issue with EPA over non-attainment due to smog. And part of the plan that got us through that non-attainment period is some mass transit or some type of transit. And so by federal law, regardless of what's going to happen there's going to be a component of some type of transit in metropolitan Atlanta. It's too large of an urban area not to have some type. Now, fortunately for us who live in Fayette County, we don't have MARTA here. We're not going to get MARTA here. It will never be here. And I hope our citizens understand that. But regardless, and y'all tell me if I'm not hitting that on right, but there's got to be some component and some measurable component for us to stay within our plan for our smog certification, so do not go back to a non-attainment area.
We do modeling for that.
Let me ask our panelists, if you would, take about a minute, and if there are any closing remarks or anything that we've missed at this point, please go ahead and give any closing remarks.
The biggest thing on me for this transportation referendum is looking at it, as I said earlier, in a very simplistic standpoint, is how much are we putting in, how much are we getting back here in Fayette County? We're getting back 137% of what we're putting in. So to me, that's a no-brainer for any type of investment you may ever do. For the issues that such as MARTA or anything else, none of our money out of Fayette County is funding any of that. Other areas are funding us. So to me, it's a win-win situation for Fayette County. For metropolitan Atlanta and for the state of Georgia, it is a total win situation. And unless somebody has a better way of funding all of these projects and doing these large projects at one time to keep us in a competitive standpoint with other states and other cities, nobody's brought any of the other type plans out. This is a very fair plan. One other thing that I didn't bring up is probably about 20 or 25% of the funds that are raised in Georgia are going to be paid for by people from out of state. And a lot of the funds that are going to be paid or raised in our region, the Metro Atlanta region, are going to be paid from people from out of our region. If people from Coweta County come to Peachtree City to buy something, somebody out of our region is paying for our projects. So keep that in mind.
Just one point of clarification. Nobody asked this. I don't think they did. If I missed it, the tax will never end. You probably heard that statement about it just goes on and on and on. Well, this bill is unique in the tax ends at 10 years. That's what the bill says real clearly. Or when revenue projections are met. So if revenue projections are met year 9.5, the tax ends then. If revenue projections are not met and you get to 10 years, the tax ends at 10 years. So 10 years or less. To reenact the tax, a majority of the counties, so you got 10 counties in this region, so 6 counties would have to actually vote, the elected leaders, to ask the General Assembly for the right to do it all over again. So you take a majority of the counties, they say, yeah, let's try it again for another 10 years. They have to go to the General Assembly. The General Assembly members representing these 10 county area, anybody who touches that area, they will have to vote and say, yeah, let's give the people a right to do it again. And then you have to go through the whole process again of selecting projects. And then guess who gets to vote? The last vote. Right. You guys do, right? The concrete man. The asphalt man, right? I'm saying, but the people get to vote again. So that's a pretty elaborate process, a 3-step process. It will not, you know, we get, oh, well, 400 got extended. Well, 400 totally different from that standpoint. 400 was not controlled by the same bill. It wasn't controlled by the same legislation. It is actually controlled by authority under the previous governor. Agreed to extend that. Now, it's funny about 400. What everybody keeps saying is, what happened to all that money they raised? Well, guess what? They did extend 400, but they're doing 14 projects with that extension of 7 years that are benefiting the people in North Fulton greatly. You don't hear anybody ever talking about that, and they're going to benefit from those 7 years. But it is what it is. It looked bad on the surface. Politically, looking back on it, probably wasn't the best of moves. But don't relate this back to the 400 tolls being extended. This is a different beast.
Well, I think I'll just add on to what Todd said. UPS is sponsoring this because we need a efficient infrastructure of transportation to do our job. And I know our CEO, Scott Davis, our CFO, Kurt Kuhn, is kind of leading the charge within our organization to support this for the simple fact that we do see that this is an opportunity to run something with an end date. When we build a project, we have a plan, we have an end date, we have a target, we have a goal to obtain, just like any other business. And in this particular referendum, that's the way it's laid out, and that's why we support it. We know it's beneficial to us from our safety point of view and how important it is from a safety point of view, providing good service to our customers. Being able to control our cost is incredible for us when we're on the road with the amount of fuel that we use and the transportation expense we incur that obviously goes on to an end user at some point in time. We have good competitors out there, and they have the same issues and the same concerns, and I know that I could probably even speak for my competitor in this deal. When we look at how we're going to improve our relationships with our employee, it's all about providing a good job, and we need that infrastructure to do it.
Well, thank you. Just in close, number one, thank you all for coming. I know a lot of you stayed. Some of you had to probably go and show homes and sell houses, and so good for you. This referendum is truly about creating jobs, creating a better future for Atlanta, reducing traffic. But in my mind, mostly to me, the biggest benefit is being able to spend more time with my family, getting home. I loved coaching my kids' softball and baseball teams. But since I took this job downtown, I can't do it. Can't do it anymore because I cannot get home reliably in time to do that. So this is one of the things that I'm really hoping that my kids will be able to, if they come back from college, number one, be able to find a job in the region. Number two, be able to get from their job home so they can coach their kids in softball or be at their kids' recital or play or those types of things. So I really encourage you to do that. More jobs, less traffic, and spend more time with your families. Let me do this because we are with realtors, and Michael and Keith and the whole group of the folks, all of you guys with realtors. I'm going to read a real quick hit list of folks who are our biggest sponsors. Next Monday, we're going to disclose, by law, we disclose to the state all of the folks who help financially support the campaign. So here's some of the big guys. Here's some of the boys, the big boys in the campaign. Delta Airlines, you've heard of them? You probably have Delta people that you work with. NCR, heard of them? UPS, Home Depot, AT&T, Georgia Power, all of those are huge corporate partners, members of the Fayette Chamber. All of those big corporate supporters. Atlanta Gaslight Resources, AGL Resources, Regions, SunTrust, GE, Siemens. I mean, I could go on. Those are the ones that are kind of the household names. But the Georgia Association of Realtors, by far the biggest single financial supporter of the campaign. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. And I don't even work for the campaign. I work for the chamber. But you guys have stepped up in such a huge way financially that it's made a lot of the basic things for the campaign possible. Most of that money, a vast majority of that money has gone directly to voter contact. And that's really what I'm going to end with, is voter contact. At the end of the day, this is no different than a county commission election, city council election, mayor election, whatever. It's going to be turnout, and it's going to be voter contact. The ads, the stuff that shows up in your mailbox, the robocalls. You guys get robocalls in Fayette County? Those are a lot of fun, aren't they? So those don't matter 1/10 as much as a personal phone call to somebody that you know, to somebody that we know is leaning yes. A personal email. I mean, that's the voter contact that counts the most. I'm going to call attention to Marcy one more time, who's down on the front row, and she's going to be here, but I'm going to rattle off her phone number real quick because I hope that you'll contact her, or Virginia. Her phone number is 770-337-4513. I'll repeat that one time in a minute because I see some of you grabbing for your pens. But we need your help. Marcy, we have got, how many phone calls that we're going to make? 200. Last I heard it was 750,000. I guess you got a lot of volunteers already. But we've got all those phone calls that have to be made. These are people that we know are leaning yes. We have got to get them out to the polls. Early voting. How many of you have already voted, by the way? Oh, bless you. How many of you are going to early vote tomorrow? You're voting twice. I like that. Are you voting yes? All right. As long as you're voting yes, you can vote twice. Saturday voting is coming up this Saturday on the 21st. But please get with Marcy. If you can help, if you've got family members, if you've got friends, colleagues, we need warm bodies that can reach out to other folks that we know. Because at the end of the day, the advertising, all this other stuff we talked about doesn't matter a bit. The sole determiner of success or failure is going to be the vote count on July 31st. So please talk to Marcy. Send those emails. We have yard signs out front. We have materials. Thank you so much, Keith and Virginia and the chamber. I'm stunned with the support. And here's my prediction, fearless prediction. What's today? Mark this day down. 17th. Here's my prediction. Fayette County will pass the T-SPLOST. It's going to pass in Fayette County.
We're going to end on that note. Please help me in thanking our panel. We appreciate each of you taking your time, being part of this. We do have materials out in the lobby, so please pick up a copy, pick up a couple if there's somebody that you'd like to give it to. And we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.